Mollie, it's great to have you on. It's good to see you on this Monday night. So what do you make of former President Trump? He's going to the border Thursday, Eagle Pass, Texas. President Biden, he's going to Brownsville. He's announced that after news about Trump's plans. What do you make of it? I think this is only the second time in 50 years President Biden has gone to the border.
Yeah, both men are associated with the border, but for President Trump, people remember that he ran his 2016 campaign on problems at the border, and then during his administration worked to close up a lawless border, whereas President Biden ran for office in 2020 on a pledge to open up the border. He did just that when he took office. It was some of the very first things he did. And so both of these trips are different. You know, Trump wants to remind people the importance of the border. Biden wants to say that that it wasn't really a problem, and insofar as it was a problem, he's there to take care of it. I don't know how well that message will resonate with voters.
How many executive actions did President Biden do to undo Trump's policies? Because critics are saying, well, you know, Republicans dropped the Senate border bill. The Republicans should be blamed. I mean, the White House is avoiding questions, according to Edward Lawrence, on why the president waited 3 years to finally talk about one executive action that may come up in the State of the Union. How many did he do?
Right, I believe it was more than 90. And the fact that Joe Biden loved that Senate border bill tells you really everything you need to know about it. No, you did not see support coming from people who really want to secure the border, who do not want to codify into law all of the things that President Biden did through his executive actions. And of course, even he's admitting now that he said that he couldn't do anything when they were discussing that Senate border bill, which wasn't really a border bill, it was really a Ukraine funding bill. And now he's admitting that there are all sorts of executive actions he can take. But this is an issue that is of prime importance to a lot of voters, both Republican and Democrat, and he really has kind of sealed his fate with the years of actions that he's taken to keep that border open.
Yeah, I think American voters are finally waking up. They're saying this is the worst White House on the border. I mean, turning to former President Trump, he won South Carolina handily. It was Trump 59%, Haley 40%. Exit polls show the South Carolina voters say, yes, it's a border crisis. Also, they're upset about record inflation. Now Trump has swept 4 states so far: Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, and South Carolina. What do you think?
Well, Trump will clearly be the Republican nominee, and it's a free country, and Nikki Haley can run in the Republican primary as long as she wants. But she does run the risk right now of being viewed almost like a Liz Cheney type character as she makes more and more of her campaign about fighting Donald Trump, particularly when, as you know, the issues that motivate Republican voters right now, and really all voters, are some of these issues like a completely open border, the lawlessness that signifies, the crime that is associated with it, the economic problems, the lack of success economically, foreign policy problems as well.
So there's this too. Billionaire Charles Koch, the network Americans for Prosperity Action, paused its financial support of Nikki Haley's campaign. Let's listen to former President Trump and Nikki Haley here. Watch this.
Now there's a spirit that I have never seen. We ran 2 great races, but there's never been a spirit like this. And I just want to say that I have never seen the Republican Party so unified as it is right now. I was just informed that we got double the number of votes that has ever been received in the great state of South Carolina.
I said earlier this week that no matter what happens in South Carolina, I would continue to run for president. I'm a woman of my word. I'm not giving up this fight when a majority of Americans disapprove of both Donald Trump and Joe Biden. We're headed to Michigan tomorrow, and we're headed to the Super Tuesday states throughout all of next week.
So staying through Super Tuesday, Nikki Haley says she gets independent and conservative Democrats coming back to the GOP. What do you think?
Well, I mean, the reason why so many Democrats give her money or have given her support is not because they love her views so much as they understand that the longer she stays in the race, the more it hurts Donald Trump. And so she's not going to be the nominee. So you wonder, why is she running? Is it merely to hurt President Trump's chances in the general election? Or is it because she's trying to position herself for a third-party run, such as no labels? And again, this is where she has to be careful, because Republicans are not going to support those efforts, and she could, again, become something like a Liz Cheney character.
Yeah, well, the head of No Labels said, yeah, we would take on Nikki Haley. Interesting.
Sure,
Mollie Hemingway, thank you so much for joining us. It's good to see you again.